Hello everybody and welcome back to Art a la Carte, and today I am working on a painting of a songbird. I actually have been wanting to do a series of songbird paintings and have been putting it off because I have so many other big and pressing projects, but sometimes you just gotta paint what you love to paint. So I'm working on that, and I thought while I'm doing it I will take you along the journey and share a couple of tips and tricks of things that I do or I don't do that help me to get a better end result. So for those of you who are interested, I'm going to make this file available, but if I do this step, I find it helps so much, and that's planning out my color palette, what I want to use. So I've made a quick sketch of this songbird, and then I have some boxes along the side that I can kind of line up my colors and see how well they look. I also have a large box towards the bottom where I can use to swatch different colors if I'm using a medium where I can create my own colors, like with watercolor. Now, things that I want to look for in my color palette is colors that work well together, and that's a whole topic on its own, color theory. But I also want to look for value contrast. So I want some really nice lights and some really dark darks. And I will tell you, I didn't do this step at the beginning of this painting. The painting turned out, I enjoyed it, but if I would have done this step, it just helps so much to get things to work better. So instead of telling you about this step at the end of the painting, when I actually went and looked at it, I thought I would put it at the beginning so that if you wanted to follow along or as you're creating your picture, you'll know that this is one of the first steps. It does take more time, and you don't have to have an exact replica of your picture. You can just draw a thumbnail, but doing a little palette trial can really help. If you'd like to have a downloadable copy of this, I'll put a link to where you can download it for free in the description box of this video. Now it is time to move on to the actual painting, which is one of my favorite parts. And I'm going to speed up a lot of this. This painting took me most of the day to do, and I don't want to have a 4 or 5 hour painting video. So I'm going to kind of speed some areas up, and then I'm also going to just show different clips as I go along. But the first step, after I have the sketch exactly the way I want it, and I talk a lot about don't rush the sketching part, make sure everything is in the place that you want it to be. But the second step is then adding your color. Now, depending on what you're working with, what art medium, you'll tackle this a different way. If you are working with watercolor like I am, you're going to start with your lightest tones first and then move to darker and darker and darker tones. Whereas if you are working with something that's very opaque like acrylic or oil painting, you're going to start with your darkest first and then pull out your highlights. So knowing what medium you're going to work with will kind of help you to determine how to start this off. I always find that something I really want to do is to get one part of the painting finished. It just gives me that hope that the rest of the painting is going to get finished. So sometimes, because I want to do this so badly, I find that sometimes I push myself a little bit too fast, and I'll jump into the dark colors because I want that finished piece. And especially with a medium like watercolor, even though when the paint's set, they don't move around a lot, but if you reactivate them with water, you can run into some issues. So I try not to let myself do this too early, but sometimes I can't help it. The bird that I am painting is a gray tufted titmouse, which is kind of like a cardinal. It reminds me of a cardinal. We don't have them here. I think they're so beautiful. But instead of being red, it's this kind of grayish blue color, more gray. But I found that as I started to put in more of a blackish gray, it just wasn't looking right. But when I added a little bit of blue to it, it started looking more what I wanted it. So when you're painting, don't think that the color you need to use is the obvious one. Case in point, check out the branch. The branch was really boring. It was just this brown branch, but then I started adding my shadows by using blues and purples. And I think it looks so cool. It's not overwhelming. It's not like, ooh, someone spray painted this branch purple, but it just kind of blends it and adds an extra little bit of life. Now with watercolor painting, you'll start off with like an undertone, and then you'll begin to add in your shadows and highlights and details on top of that. And I find sometimes if I'm getting stuck, if I don't know exactly what direction I want to go or the technique that I need to use, I work on something else. Case in point, I wasn't getting the feather technique the way I wanted it, so I thought I'm going to wait on that, think about it, and I'm going to jump into the background. Now this is the part that, had I planned out my palette, it would have been so much easier. But you can see I started off with like a yellow, and then I went with a blue, and then I had a purple, and then I threw in some black and brown and went, oh, that's the same color as the branch. And then I finally figured out I need to throw in some yellows and oranges and really get a nice fall color in there. And it turned out really good. But it went through a lot of changes and layers and looks before I got there. So pre-planning out what you want your colors to look like can help alleviate that issue. Not to say that if I have done that I don't change my mind in the middle of the painting. I do that a lot too, but chances are I won't. Chances are I'll kind of figure out those mistakes beforehand and really sit tight with a concept that I want. So you can see I went through and I slowly am adding my details of dark paint. And I'm using a really super fine tipped brush and just almost like line by line adding those in there. It is detailed, meticulous, and time consuming. And it's not something that you're going to want to rush if you want this outlook or this kind of technique. So don't rush on something just because you want it to be finished. Now, for some reason, it didn't record me doing the highlights to this, but I used actually Indian inks. Yes, some very opaque kind of white gouaches to add those colors in. Same technique that I was using with my darker tones, only with my lighter tones, little by little by little. But I noticed with all that work, I lost my undertone painting, which has this kind of goldeny glow. So I used the hairdryer and dried it really well, and then went through with a really light wash and threw in some more of those golden tones, which really added everything that I needed for the bird. I thought at this point that I was done. I kind of set it aside for a little bit, but then as I went back, I wanted to really give some extra dark tones to where the bird was sitting. I didn't feel like the feet were really connected to the branch, so I went back in there and added some final touches, which I find I do that a lot with my paintings. I'll think they're done, and they're not quite done. But I think the painting is done now, hopefully. Who knows, I might go back and change it. If you'd like to see some pictures of the finished product, you can follow me over on my Instagram page. I usually post all of my artsy kind of videos and behind the scenes over there. So thank you guys for hanging out with me in this video. I hope you found some of these tips and tricks for creating a painting helpful. If you have any suggestions or tips, let me know in the comment section below. Let's trade some insight. If you're brand new to my channel, hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any future videos. And as always, God bless you guys. Keep drawing, creating, being awesome, and we'll see you in the next art video. Bye-bye.